In baseball, Johnny Pesky did it all. From shining players' shoes to all-star shortstop, and later coach, manager, and broadcaster. Now we remember Johnny Pesky and his journey from minor league clubhouse boy to the heart of Red Sox Nation on this special edition of the Red Sox Report presented by CVS Pharmacy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fenway Park.
And now, for the Boston Red Sox, play ball.
John Michael Paveskovich was born September 27, 1919 in Portland, Oregon, the fifth of 6 children of Croatian immigrants. His parents left this house in Austria-Hungary to raise their family just blocks from Vaughn Street Ballpark, home of the Pacific Coast League's Portland Beavers. Johnny's father, Yakov, worked in the local sawmills.
He was an old Navy guy from the Austria-Hungary Navy, of all places. We had 3 boys and 3 girls, and he was proud of all of us.
Johnny's mother, Maria, kept the kids in line.
And the bottom line, as far as she was concerned, you behave. If not, you're going to answer to me. So Mom was the disciplinarian, and Papa, he was the lover.
Maria had some help from the nuns at St. Patrick's Church and school, where the Paveskovich kids spent their days learning, then playing.
We would all gather over here, choose up sides, and play baseball right here. Where I'm standing right now is where Johnny used to sing solo in the old Hennessy choir.
Johnny also played and worked at the ballpark.
And we had a groundkeeper out there, a little Italian guy by the name of Rocky Benevento. He had access to the field, and he gave us jobs to do, just to get in to see the games. And we had jobs. My first job at the old ballpark was keeping the bullpens clean, just sweep them clean and rake it and all this for the next day. And then eventually we got into the clubhouse. And then I became a clubhouse boy, and I was in the clubhouse for maybe 4 or 5 years.
We worked for nothing in those days, but we could eat all the hot dogs we could get. Always fill our pants with the peanuts that we sacked.
When the team went on the road, we had access to the baseballs and gloves, and we'd play all day long. And we had a lot of fun.
As the visiting clubhouse kid, Johnny shined the shoes of future Red Sox teammates Dom DiMaggio, Ted Williams, and Bobby Doerr.
Well, I met Bobby when I was working in the clubhouse in Oregon. He was playing at San Diego. He was there with Ted Williams. Dom was in the Coast League, too. I saw him play there.
When he wasn't working at the ballpark, he played here at Lincoln High, which is now Portland State University. He also played on city teams, American Legion teams, and ball clubs sponsored by the sawmills.
We were in a league. We were in what they call the Oregon State League, and we played maybe a schedule of 20-some games. But we had jobs to do, and I remember my first job. I was working on a saw.
In 1938 and 39, he played and worked for the Silver Falls Timber Company team, the Silverton Red Sox. The team was so named because the company's owner was Boston Red Sox owner Tom Yawkey. Johnny was a player and a groundskeeper. When he graduated from Lincoln High, he was offered $2,500 to sign with the Cardinals, but the Red Sox scout Ernie Johnson won his signature with an offer of $500 to sign and $150 a month to play.
And every time he'd come, he'd bring my mother these beautiful flowers. And she thought, "Oh, Mr. Johnson, you're a nice man, and all this." I said, "Well, Ma, we're going to get more." "I don't care about the money." She says, "He will take care of you."
In 1940, it was off to the minor leagues for Johnny Pesky, across the country to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, by train.
The only thing I wanted to do at that time was to play ball. And if they'd have sent me to Russia, I'd have probably gone.
Hall of Famer and the 1926 American League batting champ Heine Minush was his manager.
And he called me over and he said, "Johnny," he says, "you can't hold a bat on the end." He says, he says, these guys 90 mile an hour fast, they'll knock the bat out. I says, behind you, I'm strong. So I did what he said, and I got there, and gee, this feels pretty good. So I led the league in hits right out of high school.
187 hits to be exact, and he led the club in hitting at 325. So he was promoted to Double-A Louisville, where he again hit 325, again led the league in hits, this time with 195, and this time he was the league's most valuable player. After 2 spectacular years in the minors, he'd earned an invite to spring training with the Sox for the 1942 season. In 42, the Sox spring training was held in Sarasota, Florida. Manager Joe Cronin's decision on whether to keep Pesky came down to one of spring's final games.
About the 6th inning, Vandermeer threw me a curveball, and I hit it to right center field for a triple. And he come over to me after the inning, he says, "Kid, you just made the ball club."
He didn't just make the team, he led the American League in hits with 205. His .331 average was second in the league to Ted Williams' .356, but there was no Rookie of the Year award handed out until 1947. During his rookie season, with World War II raging overseas, Johnny joined Ted in a Navy class 3 nights a week learning to fly fighter planes. At the ballpark, Johnny and his roommate Bobby Dorr, along with Ted and Dom DiMaggio, formed a band of baseball brothers.
We became great friends in 42 when we saw each other day in and day out, and we got to know each other's talent.
But after the foursome's first year as teammates, they were broken up by World War II. Following Pesky's spectacular rookie season of 1942, Sox owner Tom Yawkey met with him, said thanks, and handed Johnny an envelope.
I opened the envelope, and it was enough money to pay for a house in Oregon.
Johnny bought his parents this house in Portland with Yawkey's generous gift.
That's something you never forget. I'm getting goosebumps when I think about it. But a wonderful man.
That house stayed in the family. In the Navy, Johnny helped the Air Wing as a systems operations officer. He was sent to Atlanta, where he met a teammate for life.
She had a little bit of an New England accent. I says, "Where are you from?" She says, "Lynn, Massachusetts."
She was Ruth Hickey. For Johnny, it was love at first sight. In 1945, they were married in Lynn.
I guess the pretty girls go for the ugly ones, but I used to kid her about that. She said, "Yeah, you'd pass with a push or whatever," but had a great sense of humor.
Johnny spent 3 years in the service, Atlanta, then Pearl Harbor, and thankfully never on the front lines. In 1946, with Williams, DiMaggio, Dorr, and Pesky back in the lineup, the Sox were the American League's top team, and again, Pesky led the league in hits with 208. At mid-season, Fenway Park hosted the All-Star Game, and Pesky was the AL shortstop. By season's end, he hit .335, helping the Sox to 104 wins and the league title. There were no playoffs then, it was straight to the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. In a tight 7th game, Dom DiMaggio nearly homered, but as his 2-run double hit the wall, tying the game, DiMaggio pulled his hamstring, hustling into second base. So DiMaggio was not in center field for the key play in the bottom of the 8th when the Cards broke the tie.
Culberson went in to play center field, and then there were 2 outs, and Harry Walker's the hitter. Culberson, for some reason, is over in right center. Bobby gives me the sign to cover second base of a steal. So Slaughter's stealing, and he had a good jump. The ball is hit to left center. I got to go to the bag when the pitch goes to the plate. Now I got to find the ball, and I see instead of the ball here, it's over here. So I got to get out to the outfield, and as I say, Slaughter was almost at second base when the ball, but it wasn't a line drive. It was a looping fly. So I'm out in left center field, and I get the throw, and I look and I find Slaughter. I needed a rifle. I'd have needed a Nomar arm to get him. So the go-ahead runs, scores.
That would be the winning run as the Cards won the World Series.
Everything got quiet in our clubhouse, and I looked down there, and I saw Ted actually weep. He wanted to win so bad for Mr. Yawkey.
I don't think John was at fault. He did the natural thing. The ball was relayed to him, and he turned and started to run in. And here's Slaughter running as fast as he could for home plate. By the time John stopped and set himself, it was too late.
I learned a long time ago, if you accused of messing up, you accept it. So I just kept it. I said, look at it, people want to blame me, that's their privilege.
In 1947, his third big league season, he again led the league in hits, this time with 207, but there would be no World Series. He'd been known as Johnny Pesky since his days in the minor leagues because not only was Paveskovich difficult to say, but it didn't fit in the box scores. So in 1947, he legally changed his name.
My mother was a little upset. She says, John, you're ashamed of your name. I says, Ma, you're in America now. A lot of people do that. I'm proud of my ancestry, and I'm proud of my parents, and they were good living, they were honest people.
Although Pesky was hitting, the Sox wanted more pop. So in 1948, they brought in power-hitting shortstop Vern Stevens. Pesky moved to third base, and his average dropped to .281. In 49, now comfortable at the hot corner, his average shot up to .306. The 48 and 49 seasons came down to the final games, and in each case, some excellent Sox teams lost.
I thought, sure, when we were there after the 42 season, I thought we'd win 3 or 4 pennants.
But there would be no more pennants as a player. He did, however, keep hitting. In 1950, .312. In 51, he moved back to short and hit .313. In 52, Lou Boudreau, a shortstop himself, took over as manager. He was not a fan of Pesky, who played in just 21 games before being traded June 3rd. Johnny went to the Tigers in that 9-player deal. In Detroit, he played both short and second base, but by 53, he was just a part-timer. Off the field, though, the news was much better.
We didn't have any children of our own. We adopted this young man, and he turned out to be the best thing that ever could have happened to us. And my son traveled everywhere with us.
Everywhere included Washington, where Johnny was traded in 1954. He played in just 37 games there and was released after the season. The Orioles gave him a shot to make the club in 55, but that ended when Paul Richards couldn't make a trade that would have given Pesky some playing time. Dom DiMaggio, a successful businessman by then, was one of the first to call.
He wanted me to go to work for him, and I says, Dominic, I love you like my own brother. I says, but I'm a jock and I'm going to die a jock.
Johnny was right. His baseball career was just beginning. Shortly after he was released by the Orioles in the spring of 1955, the Yankees hired Johnny Pesky to coach under manager Ralph Helk for their AAA team in Denver.
It was one of the best things I ever did. I was throwing BP every day, hitting infield.
The coaching went so well that from 1956 to 1960, he managed 5 different teams in the Tigers organization. In the off-seasons, he managed as well, with David and Ruthie in tow.
I remember trips on the team bus through the Smoky Mountains. I remember going to Nicaragua and playing ball down there. It was a great life for a kid.
In 1961, the Red Sox hired Johnny to manage the AAA Seattle Rainiers. He was back with the Sox and back in the Pacific Coast League. On the field, things were great, but by this time, David was older. He had to go to school, so his travel was limited.
I missed him terribly. I remember one time I wrote him a letter and put S&H green stamps, I don't know if you remember what those are, on it, to mail to him, because I missed him. And I was crying, I missed Daddy.
After the 62 season, Tom Yawkey promoted Pinky Higgins from Red Sox manager to general manager and hired Pesky to manage the team. But in Pesky's first year as manager, the 63 Sox finished in 7th place, a frustrating time. The next season, 1964, was even worse. His relationship with Higgins was going downhill.
I tried to make some moves, and I was never allowed to make them. And I think we could have. And he was the general manager, and I know he didn't care much for me as a person.
Things reached a low point when Higgins forced Pesky to fire good friend and pitching coach Harry Dorish. Ruthie met Johnny at the door.
The words right out of her mouth, "Why didn't you tell the general manager to stuff the job?" I says, "But David was a child, you know, and she says, Johnny, this guy don't want you. I know it's a big league job, she says, but there's other jobs. We'll survive. And how many wives would tell you that? That's why we've had such a good marriage.
Ruthie was right. With 2 games left in the 1964 season, Johnny was fired. But his coaching days continued. From 1965 to 1968, he coached and managed in the minors for the Pirates. And then came yet another career change within the game. From 1969 to 1974, aside from playing a little golf, Johnny called Red Sox games on both TV and radio alongside legends Ken Coleman and Ned Martin. In '75, Pesky was back on the field as the Sox first base coach under manager Darrell Johnson. The Sox won the American League crown, but again fell short of winning it all when the Reds took the World Series in 7 games. '75 was also the rookie year of the Gold Dust twins, Fred Lynn and Jim Rice. Pesky hit thousands of balls to Rice as he worked on his defense.
Johnny Pesky, my teacher, mainly my whole career.
The hardest working guy we've ever had around here has been Jimmy Rice. He wanted to be the best. You know, that's what I admired about him.
Pesky coached first base until manager Don Zimmer moved him to bench coach and hitting coach in 1980. He did that until 1984.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Beginning in 1985, Pesky held roles as a special assistant and player development consultant. Aside from a brief stint as interim manager of the Paw Sox in 1990, he was always a presence at Fenway Park and in Fort Myers for spring training, sharing his personality and passion for the game.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Joe.
Johnny.
How are you?
Great. How are
nice
you?
To
Good
see you. Good luck.
In mid-2005, Johnny suffered his greatest loss when his beloved wife and partner since World War II passed away.
Just a sad thing. We've been married 61 years, and I really got a queen. She was a lovely girl, and we had a good marriage, and she did a good job with the boy, and that's all you can ask. That's all you ask for.
She made the house, made the home. You know, and that's important because, you know, growing up in a baseball family, you don't always have, you know, dad at home.
I think about those days that we had when we were young, when we were in our early 20s, and there was just so much love from her to David and to me that was just, it was like, you know, like a big piece of ice cream, you know, delicious, and I loved them so much.
He had swept the clubhouse floors, shined the players' shoes, mowed the grass, and worked his way all the way to Big League All-Star. He had hit .307 lifetime. He'd been a coach, manager, and broadcaster. He had done it all in baseball, except win a World Series. So there he was in St. Louis, October 27, 2004, again hoping to beat the Cardinals. He sat above third base with Sox executive Dr. Charles Steinberg.
In about the top of the 8th inning, we got up from these loge-level seats and down the third base way, and we started to make our way through the concourse where St. Louis fans were recognizing him and congratulating him. That in itself was surreal. And with 1 out in the bottom of the 9th inning, we deposited Johnny in the clubhouse. And for me personally, sitting with him and taking him to the clubhouse for what would then transpire was my favorite part of the 2004 World Series.
Hey, big one. What about the woodpecker?
There were a lot of tears spent. He was crying, and I never saw so much happiness in a ballpark as much as that.
And everybody was crying. But they were so happy with tears of happiness. It was just such a wonderful thing. It was just something you never forget.
On April 11th of 2005, Johnny Pesky finally received a World Championship ring.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great moment. Thank you. Let's go, Johnny. We love you, man. We love you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You gotta dip that hat again. You gotta dip that hat again.
You might understand the law, but you don't understand baseball.
With his best friend Ruthie gone, Johnny was surrounded by longtime, close friends. They continued their ritual of gathering many times each week for breakfast.
He was as good a third baseman as ever played the game.
On September 27, 2006, as popular as ever, Johnny Pesky celebrated his 87th birthday at Fenway Park.
My dad told me once, I feel more at home at Fenway than at home. And I believe that. And I can see why, because he's treated well. He's got a lot of friends. He's got a million friends. And he remembers them all.
Nice to see you. Thank you. You're welcome.
That night, the right field foul pole, referred to as Pesky's pole for so long, was officially dedicated.
Mel Parnell started that business. He was pitching here. We were on this ball club. And I won a ball game for him late in the game. Now he's back broadcasting about 7, 8 years later. He says, gee, that home run reminds me, in 1948, Johnny hit a home run for me around that pole. And we says, he had a different name for it, but they called it Pesky's pole. Peace.
2 years later, another honor would ensure that Johnny Pesky will forever be a part of Fenway Park. On September 28, 2008, he became just the 6th Red Sox to have his number retired by the ball club.
I didn't think I was that popular. My God. This has been a great day of my life, and I want to thank the owners for this wonderful gift. I never thought it would be up there, because when you play with such good players, why, when it comes to you, you just can't believe it. But I have a lot of great memories. I have a lot of great memories of the old Red Sox. There were a lot of you here today that never saw me play, but I appreciate you being here. However, I want to thank Mr. Henry and Mr. Lucchino, Mr. Werner. They kept me on when the golf club was sold, and I thought maybe I was going to have to retire. And I'm planning on that, but as long as they keep sending me out there, I'm going to keep coming back. I enjoy you guys. I love you.
Thank you, Johnny Pesky.
And on April 20th, 2012, it was Johnny and his friend and former teammate Bobby Doerr who capped off a memorable celebration to mark Fenway Park's 100th anniversary.
This is what's good about this game, you know. Some days you feel you could reach the heavens, and other days you have to look up to a snake. Baseball is wonderful.
And you, Johnny Pesky, were a wonderful part of it.